Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We have breaking news for you in our politics lead just moments ago. Brand new subpoenas were issued for former President Trump's inner circle, proving that the House Select Committee investigating the deadly January 6th insurrection is shifting into high gear, preparing to do battle with some pretty big names in the Trump world that the panel says fueled the big lie and perhaps incited the violent insurrection. Former senior advisor Stephen Miller, former press secretary Kayleigh McEnany, and former White House Presidential Personnel Office Director Johnny McEntee are just three of the new names added to the long list of Trump allies the panel wants to hear directly from. Let's get right to CNN's Ryan Nobles live for us from Capitol Hill. Ryan, these are some really close allies of Trump's.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Jake. This is a group with very close ties to the former President Donald Trump. 10 subpoenas in all were issued today by the January 6th Select Committee. But what remains to be seen is whether or not this committee will have the power to force this group of individuals to comply with their request.
New targets to help uncover who was behind the insurrection, narrowing in on those closest to the former president, Donald Trump. The committee dropping more subpoenas today, 10 new ones, including key players in the Trump orbit in the time between the November election and January 6th. The biggest names: longtime loyal advisor Stephen Miller, body man turned White House personnel chief Johnny McEntee, and former press secretary Kayleigh McEnany. McEnany, one of the loudest voices in Trump's inner circle, peddling the big lie about the election results, both in and outside the White House.
The integrity of our election matters. The Constitution of the United States matters. What we have seen across the country is Democrat officials systematically trying to do an end run around the Constitution to tip the scales of the election in their favor.
The committee's requests Tuesday come one day after they issued a batch of subpoenas to other high-ranking Trump officials like former campaign manager Bill Stepien and spokesman Jason Miller. The committee also wants to hear from John Eastman, the conservative lawyer who authored the memo outlining fringe legal theories about former Vice President Mike Pence's authority to overturn election results as part of a pressure campaign.
We know there was fraud, traditional fraud that occurred. We know that dead people voted.
And former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik. All four of them, Stepien, Miller, Eastman, and Kerik, among those gathered at a D.C. hotel for what is described as a war room to overturn the election. Kerik already warning that he does not plan to comply. I will not be threatened, intimidated, forced into bankruptcy, or silenced at the hands of this committee, who are not looking for truth, but targeting patriots and members of the president's legal team that wanted nothing more to investigate and expose those irregularities, Kerik said in a statement. His confrontational tone, an example of the difficult time the committee is having getting Trump allies to cooperate. Their ability to get witnesses to cooperate hinging in part on a decision by the Department of Justice, which is yet to weigh in on a criminal contempt referral of Steve Bannon, who has openly defied a committee subpoena. Attorney General Merrick Garland refusing to shed any light on how the DOJ plans to respond.
We evaluate these in the normal way we do, facts and the law, and applying the principles of prosecution.
And just a little more on some of these other subpoena targets that may not be as big as public names as some of the names we just mentioned in our piece. Nicholas Luna, this is someone who served as the former president's body man. Ben Williamson, who was close with the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. And Keith Kellogg, this name is interesting, Jake, the former national security advisor to the vice president, Mike Pence. This is one of the first individuals that we've seen with specific ties to the former vice president that the committee has issued a subpoena for. Jake?
All right, Ryan Nobles on Capitol Hill with the breaking news. Thanks so much. Let's discuss this with CNN's Gloria Borger and Kim Whaley, former assistant U.S. attorney. Kim, let me start with you. It's been about 2 weeks since a majority of the House of Representatives, a bipartisan vote, voted to refer criminal contempt of Congress charges against Bannon to the Department of Justice. Attorney General Merrick Garland has not yet weighed in. How long do you think it's going to take before he makes a decision one way or the other?
Well, as Gloria and I were talking off air, there is a new U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. as of 4 days ago, and that's actually the person that technically would make this decision. And so it could be a matter of days, it could be a matter of weeks, but I think this has to happen really soon, or we are going to see a breakdown of Congress itself and its ability to do these kinds of investigations, which frankly, the problem traces back to the first impeachment and the acquittal on obstruction of Congress, where the Congress basically said it's okay if you ignore all requests, White House, and here we're paying the price. And the American people are paying the price.
And that's the point, because until they make a decision, right, until these other individuals, Stephen Miller, Kayleigh McEnany, and others, until they see whether or not Bannon is forced to comply, they'll just follow his lead, I would think. What do you make of some of these new subpoenas against Stephen Miller, Kayleigh McEnany, Johnny McEntee, and others?
Right. Well, these are people inside the White House who had direct conversations with the president, sat in the Oval Office, overheard the president, were in the room with the president, and you know, they kind of outline it here, made public statements about the so-called rigged election, the big lie. And, you know, they tell you, they give you the roadmap about why they need to hear from them, because they know what went on in the room when they were there.
Right.
And so they've already interviewed other people, clearly, who are telling them a story. And now they're going to them and saying, okay, we know this happened. Tell me about it. And so, you know, these are people who they could claim privilege because they worked in the White House. The batch we had yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, didn't work in the White House. Steve Bannon did not work in the White House, yet he is claiming privilege. These people will certainly try and claim that, which is why they're sort of waiting on what Merrick Garland decides to do at DOJ.
Now, in that clip, we saw Kayleigh McEnany lying to the American people. It's not a crime to lie to the American people. If it were, Kayleigh McEnany would have been charged on the first day as press secretary. But what do you think the committee is looking for here? What do they want to know? It's not just, did the president tell you to go out there and lie to the American people? Because, of course, he did.
Well, they're looking to see what steps were taken within government that led to the January 6th insurrection. Of course, over 500 of the insurrectionists have been paying the price one way or the other, the criminal justice system, but no one's been charged with who funded it, how well organized was it, and who was in on that. These could lead to questions of conspiracy to defraud the United States, maybe RICO charges, obstruction of Congress. Of course, then there's also questions on whether Donald Trump incited an insurrection, which gets to the First Amendment. But I just want to put a pin in this whole thing with the contempt. Yeah. This is an attempt to run out the clock. 1 year from today, 1 year from today is the day for midterm elections in the United States Congress.
Right.
And if that, as the tea leaves appear to be reading, goes to the Republicans, the entire thing is probably going to get shut down. And these claims are bogus, these executive privilege claims, but it takes a while to get them through the courts.
And can I just add one more thing about Kayleigh McEnany, because the committee says that Ms. McEnany was reportedly present at times with the former president as he watched the January 6th attack. Now, we've heard reports that he was pleased with it, that look at all these people, they're for me, they believe the election was rigged. Well, Kayleigh McEnany, if she were to testify and not try to stonewall and run out the clock, if she were to testify truthfully, she might be able to shed some light on exactly what the president was saying during the attack, what he was thinking. Maybe he was saying, oh, look at this. This is great.
This bears on criminal intent.
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And isn't the idea here whether or not, look, we just did a whole documentary about this. This was a months-long campaign to try to subvert democracy. It didn't just happen on January 6th. He tried every legal mean, and then he tried extra legal means. And here we have a question. Did Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, and others actually intend for January 6th to be an attempt to either intimidate or threaten or force the electors to go to him instead of to Joe Biden? And one of the things we reported in the documentary is there were members of the Biden team for about an hour that day, January 6th, who thought that Trump had succeeded, who thought that the electors' counting had stopped and Donald Trump had figured out a way to cling to power.
Listen, this is not so much looking in the past, it's looking in the future. This is what is going to probably happen to American democracy if this continues. That is, if this Republican, new wave Republican takeover of the law, of the rule of law, the notion of government by we the people. If you look at the Eastman memo, it's a stunning sort of outmaneuvering of the Constitution itself.
Completely
this is what we will
unconstitutional,
see.
though.
This is what we will see.
But completely unconstitutional.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the idea is like just to be clear, this isn't about who gets to cast votes. This is about whose votes count.
Right.
That was about stealing votes from the Electoral College and the people in 7 states who voted for Joe Biden.
And these are people like Keith Kellogg, who was apparently there when Donald Trump was saying to Mike Pence, you got to decertify this election. So these are people who were eyewitnesses to a president trying to have a coup.
Well, there are 2 key dates too, right? There's a White House meeting in December, and then there's a January 5th at the Willard Hotel.
The Willard Hotel.
Yeah.